Intro, baby. Welcome in a Monday Ringer Gambling Show with the East Coast Bias boys as the NFL season has come to a close. And our new champion, the Seattle Seahawks. The boys are ready to break it down. Jastremski via Las Vegas. Raheem Palmer right next door to me via Las Vegas. We have Joe House, who survived Boston and the frigid New England temperatures and a ceremony with Bob Cousy. Great to see you, fellas. House, 60-1 was the preseason number on the Seattle Seahawks. And it is crazy now to look back on this NFL season and to look back on this Super Bowl and consider the fact that all three of us were skeptical on the Seattle Seahawks at the beginning of the year. We wondered, what would the move going from Geno Smith to Sam Darnold, what would that look like? Would Mike Macdonald be able to follow up a very successful first season where his team won 10 games, fell short of the postseason, but found themselves in a division that couldn't have been more loaded, right? Because you know the Rams in their pedigree. The Niners were resurgent. They ended up in the postseason. And this knucklehead actually liked the Arizona Cardinals as well. And a lot of people happen to like the Arizona Cardinals. But Joe House, the Seattle Seahawks, 60-1, we could have had that as a ticket at the beginning of the year. And they are Super Bowl champions. What a wild ride. The Ringer Gambling Show is brought to you by FanDuel. The football season may be coming to an end, but things are only getting started on the court. FanDuel is the #1 choice for same-game parlays, live betting, and more during the NBA season. And don't forget, with FanDuel, you get paid instantly when you win. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app now and play your game. 21 plus and present in select states, or 18 plus and present in D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut.
Yeah, JJ, I will say this. I feel like the 61-1 at the beginning of the season was a fair price. And we will, over the course of this conversation, give our flowers out to the well-deserved defense. But really, the uncertainty surrounding Seattle coming into the season, in addition to the quarterback position, was how would that offensive line fare? Because the reason to be skeptical of Seattle was the previous year, they won 10 games, but they had a bottom 5 offensive line. They had Geno Smith, running for his life and throwing, in less than 2 seconds. That was the only way for them to have any offense. And so in August of 2025, 60-1 flashes up for Seattle. And the question is, I feel good about the defense. I think scheme-wise, giving that group another year with Mike Macdonald, for Mike Macdonald to know that group, look out. But what the hell's going to happen on offense? And who, more than Sam Darnold, is susceptible to pressure, right? This was the hard thing, trying to figure out what we were going to do with Seattle. Well, those questions were answered. And not only over the course of the season, but we saw it in big, bright lights last night. They were able to establish the run. The Seattle offense ran. They ran outside. Nobody could run outside on the New England Patriots. Well, Seattle did it, and that was a big reason for why they got across the goal line, in addition to an outstanding defense.
Yeah, when you look at the Seattle Seahawks, they're the biggest preseason long shot to win a Super Bowl since the 2001 Patriots, ironically, tied for the second biggest preseason long odds in the last 50 years, according to sports odds history. So it was very shocking for me to see where this team was going. I mean, you look at Sam Darnold, the history of his career. You could almost compare him to like Buster Douglas, because no one saw this coming at all. Like, at the end of the day, I mean, Buster Douglas was a 50-1 underdog against Mike Tyson. And you're kind of seeing the same thing. You're talking about a guy who was seeing ghosts in that Week 18 game against the Detroit Lions, and then was seeing ghosts again against the Los Angeles Rams. So I don't think a lot of people expected him to perform this well behind a questionable offensive line. But you got to give some credit to their head coach. I mean, the head coach did a tremendous job, but also Clint Kubiak, who was the offensive coordinator and will be the head coach for the Raiders next year. I mean, he called a terrific game. You look at Sam Darnold. It looked like he was trying to give that game away in the first quarter, and they decided, you know what? We're going to not put the ball in harm's way. We're going to run the ball with Kenneth Walker. And Kenneth Walker, I mean, look, there were times to where it felt like they had him dead to rights behind the backfield, and he made a move here, a move there, and just was able to escape that 30-yard rush, to put them up 6-0. I mean, that was huge. And then, once they got the ball back and they went up 9-0, it just felt like the game was over because it felt like the New England Patriots weren't going to be able to move the ball consistently. They leaned on the defense, leaned on the run game. And I hate to say it, but we've gone back to the 80s and 90s and the 70s where defense matters. If you could play defense and you can run the ball, that's what we've seen in the last 2 Super Bowls. You can get home with 4 and, throw some periodic blitzes out there, you're a contender, regardless of who your quarterback is.
So it's wild to me, Raheem, the way this game unfolded as far as a margin, because it felt like New England's defense did a really, really good job. Like, you look at the way Seattle was moving the ball, yes, but they were not finishing off drives. You want to blame that on Sam Darnold. You want to give the credit to Mike Vrabel and the way they were scheming it up. Great. But I'm sitting there with an under bet. And the reason I love the under in this Super Bowl, one, the strength of the Seattle defense that's been unbelievable all year. But I thought that New England would be able to bottle up Kenneth Walker. They've been so good at stopping the run. I didn't necessarily have on my bingo card dream Kenneth Walker, a running back. We spend a lot of time talking about the MVP odds and how we kind of lay it all out, how it's set up for a quarterback to go and win the award. I'm watching the game with you 24 hours ago, and I could tell you in like the second quarter of this game, Sam Darnold's not winning the MVP. Juicy ticket if you found your way to go and get Kenneth Walker, and they got to the outside. That is why Kenneth Walker was able to have success. It wasn't running at Barmore. It wasn't running at Williams. It was getting it to the outside, getting it to that next level, and that's how you go and basically have 180 total yards, which is going to go and net you a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, I mean, we did give out Sam Darnold versus the field to win MVP minus 155, so I'm really proud of that. I think ultimately, this game came down to the Patriots offense. I think we all handicapped this game the right way, even myself, who I know I gave out the Patriots. You guys can kill me for that. I'll take total blame for that. But ultimately, this game played out the way I thought it would play out. We gave out the under 46.5. JJ gave it out again at 45.5, but we knew this would be a low-scoring game, and we knew that both defenses would be able to, put their mark on this game. But I think ultimately, to me, Drake May was just so horrible that he never really gave you a chance. I mean, you're talking about a guy who, according to True Media, he had the 6th worst EPA per dropback in the Super Bowl since 2000. And if you look at, just as a whole in the postseason, he's had 3 of the 10 worst EPA per play games in the postseason. So I don't know if his shoulder was giving some problems, but ultimately he couldn't make plays. And then when you look at Mike Vrabel, I know he's done a good job all year long, but he has some really cowardly punts on 4th and 1 and 4th and 2. But Drake May just missed a ton of throws. You had that throw to Hunter Henry where it's like he's wide open. And I think if they just could have made some more plays on offense, I think they would have had a shot, because ultimately they really only gave up 19 points. I know the final score was 29-13, but if you look at that score, one of those was a pick 6 and the other one was an interception that put them right into territory. So ultimately this loss falls on Drake May.
Not fighting you on that, Joe House. And look, bad offensive lines don't travel. And you got to give the New England Patriots credit for the fact that they were able to scheme up for most of this year the liability specifically that they had with their young left tackle. Mr. Campbell, I know he's a good story. I know he's got a good attitude. I know people are rooting for him up in New England. He got flat out abused in this postseason. I mean, look at all these games. Abused.
My only pushback to Dream and putting all of this blame on Drake May is I look at the offensive line that he was behind. It was by far by far the weakest link in this football game. The weakest unit in the football game was New England Patriots offensive line. They gave up pressure on 19 dropbacks. Drake May on those 19 dropbacks was 3 of 10 for 40 yards with 2 picks and a lost fumble. He was sacked 6 times. He really was sacked more than that, but they don't call it on the interception that was 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That's not a sack. That's just a pick 6. But that was the sort of 10,000 foot level view for me is Seattle just did not beat itself. It would not beat itself. And New England ended up in this position. Look, they made it to the Super Bowl as a young team ahead of schedule because they caught the good fortune. Now, they did leverage that good fortune. They earned this 2 seed and had home playoff games against Houston and against the Chargers, but they had the great opportunity to play teams with units that were worse, with offensive side of the ball that just couldn't do anything. And then they caught Denver with Bo Nix on the sidelines. And so this performance by May in the playoffs, I think, is really reflective of the true nature of the New England offense, which is when they're up against a tough defense, they have a hard time. They averaged 18 points, under 18 points a game in these playoffs. That is the version we saw last night was the same kind of offense that we saw against those other teams. It's just that Seattle didn't give them the football where they could go ahead and score on short fields, and there was no defensive touchdown opportunity for New England. Even though all of us in that first quarter saw some opportunities maybe from Darnold, Christian Gonzalez really was dialed in there. And to the Patriots defensive credit, they took away JSN. We barely heard from him at all, but ultimately that New England offensive line let them down. So I'm not willing to put it all on Drake May.
Yeah, that's okay. Fair, House. That's definitely fair.
That said, though, when you're the quarterback of the team and you're basically the runner-up and you're right there for MVP, offensive line or not, you go and stink
Thank
up
God.
the Super Bowl.
Thank God.
Of course, you're going to hear about it. You're going to hear about it throughout the course of the summer until we hit the 2026 season. And we'll maybe try to connect the dots looking ahead to whether or not the Patriots will follow the script of a certain team that one of us, dare I say, roots for. That's all I'm going to say. We call that a tease here in the podcast and the television business. Joe House, I got to give you some flowers, though, buddy boy. I got to give you some flowers. So we, on the Ringer Sunday pregame, of course, throughout all the Ringer Sunday content, the weekly content, whatever the hell we call it these days, gave out props up the wazoo. We gave you props galore. Joe House, Mac Hollins, buddy boy. You can take your victory lap. I'm dying to know, though, did you bet him to go and have the most receiving yards in the game? That's the $1 million question.
That's the one I missed. I just laddered him, on the receiving totals because you just had to remember that symbiosis, that relationship between he and Drake May. He really is Drake May's safety blanket, and May was comfortable just throwing the ball up. The first reception he had down the field, it was a duck ball. I mean, it was not like a on a rope, this perfect thing. And it was into double coverage, maybe triple. But Hollins went and grabbed it and confirmed why it is that he and May have their relationship. But then Hollins really, doubled down with his own performance. That touchdown was great. No, I was happy to get Hollins all those tickets cashed.
Well, I was happy to see it as well. I'm glad that I laddered. I'm glad that I hopped on with my boy. But Raheem, you know this. I was all over the Cooper Kupp train. So when I see him involved early and then he's hitting 30 and then he's going north of 50, the only thing that was missing from Cooper Kupp was finding pay dirt and scoring a touchdown. So unfortunately, the family meal did not cash. We'll have to get redemption in 2026 season. But it's always a bizarre sight, Raheem, when that first touchdown bet that everybody is anxiously awaiting to cash. Usually it happens in the first couple of minutes of a Super Bowl. Dream, we had to wait until after Bad Bunny to cash that first touchdown with Barter, for goodness sakes. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it happened like deep into the third quarter. So, that was, I won't say it's stunning because, we kind of predicted this. Anthony had the first half under, as I always do in the Super Bowl. I play second half, highest scoring half. And then, we had the under, so we just didn't expect a lot of points. And, Mike McDonald is one of those guys who he's going to take the points. So it wasn't that shocking to see that.
And over field goals for Jason Myers. I mean, talk about a lock. That was a stone cold lock, and that's how they priced it in accordingly. Our friends at FanDuel, they know what they're doing. Joe House, I have to admit, though, as someone that had a huge ticket on the under, when I see Kenneth Walker flying into the night, and it looks like this baby out of nowhere is about to go over, I literally grabbed Raheem as the graphic on the NBC bug said flag, and I said, it might have been me willing this into existence. I was like, that has to be a hold, right? I'm not going to lose this bet like this. This can't be House.
It did get a little nerve-wracking for the holders of the under tickets because the defensive touchdown starts to put you in harm's way. The short field goal puts you in harm's way. And then it really was, I wondered if New England would just go get another cheapie, at the very end there. There wasn't enough time. All the timeouts were gone. But, you saw Seattle take their foot off the pedal a tiny bit when the game was, with about 6 minutes left, honestly. And I thought, oh boy, this could be an over. Oh, that's going to ruin a handful of plays out there. You got it home, though.
When it was 19-7, House, did you think that New England had a shot? Because it looked like they were driving there with the 50-yard line. And then
Raheem was starting to believe, House. That is absolutely true. Raheem was starting to believe.
I honestly thought, my play on the game was New England plus 10.5 and under 51.5. And I was really happy that I bought, the extra point, made it over under 51.5 rather than 51. And also I was like, you know what? This 10 points is live. It felt live to me into the fourth quarter that New England could lose just, 29-19, something like that.
Final thought, and I'm putting you guys on the spot with this, but you're great NFL historians. We now have seen 2 back-to-back virtuoso defensive performances in the Super Bowl. Raheem, we saw it in New Orleans with what Philadelphia was able to do to Kansas City. Seattle's defense speaks for itself at what it's been able to do all year. These defenses, it's impossible to compare them to the likes of the Ravens or even Tampa Bay with the rule changes and the complexion of the NFL and how drastically different the NFL looks. Are you feeling confident enough to call Seattle in 2025 an all-time defense?
Oh, without a doubt. And I've really got to give Seattle some credit. I think the interesting thing is when you look through their schedule, no one was able to score except for Sean McVay's Rams, who had Matthew Stafford the MVP, and Baker Mayfield putting up 38 points on this defense on the road. Everybody else struggled to score. San Francisco struggled to score in their 3 meetings. You look at Minnesota didn't score. Atlanta scored 9. Indianapolis scored 16. Obviously, that was with Phillip Rivers. Carolina scored 10. Like, no one scored against this defense. So they are definitely an all-time defense. I mean, if you look at what they've done, 17 points a game. That is crazy in the modern NFL, especially when you move the kick up to the 35. Like, the teams are getting the ball to 35. So this is an all-time defense, one of the best that I've ever seen. I got to give credit where credit is due. I wasn't a believer in the offense, but this defense was incredible.
How's all-time defense to you?
Yeah, of course. Yes. The only team, Dream referenced it, that had any kind of formula to compete with them what was the Rams, and the Rams have extraordinary weapons in addition to the MVP. I mean, they could run the ball with a two-headed rush attack. They have guys at the tight end position. They have slot receivers. They have wideouts. They have speed across the board. Honestly, this is going to sound crazy. If they had Tutu Atwell in that game, I really do like their chances to get the NFC conference championship game. They were missing a tiny bit of verticality, but look, that game was, who had the ball last, basically. No, I think this Seattle defense earned it. And the hard thing will be, I'm tempted right now as we look at the odds board going forward, whose defense do I think can replicate this kind of performance? Because we have the now back-to-back Super Bowl outcomes where the defenses came in, set the tone. I give that we have to give that Eagles defense what they did to Mahomes. I mean, it's one thing to do it to a second-year quarterback in Drake May. It's a whole nother deal to do that to Patrick Mahomes. Make sure we give Philadelphia their flowers. That's all I'm saying.
I guess we have to.
It,
And at the
it
end of the
turns out
day,
the Eagles actually had a championship offense this year.
LOL. We have so much more coming your way in this loaded edition of the Ringer Gambling Show. It's with the East Coast Bias Boys. I mentioned a certain team that one of us may root for. Following script going to take place in 2026. You'll find out coming up next. Rock and rolling right here on the Ringer Gambling Show, Monday edition, East Coast Bias Boys. John Jastremski, Joe House, and Raheem Palmer. And gentlemen, the loser of the Super Bowl usually has a massive hangover the following season. It's just par for the course. Now, there are anomalies. When Patrick Mahomes is your quarterback, tends not to matter. When Tom Brady is your quarterback, tends not to matter. But plenty of examples over the last 20 or 30 years will tell you losing the Super Bowl, that next year there's this sort of stank attached to your football team. Now, Joe House, your team did not lose the Super Bowl. They lost in the NFC Championship game. But why do I look at the 2024 Washington Commanders and draw parallels to the 2025 New England Patriots? It's pretty simple. Massive overachievers, feel-good seasons, emerging young quarterbacks, whole lot of things going right. And then we look at Washington in 2025, and it was a year from hell. It was a nightmarish a season as you could possibly have. Here's New England, 2026. You know Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, they're going to be there. They're going to have 2 games with them. The AFC East is going to play a very difficult schedule. New England played an incredibly soft schedule in 2025. So, Joe, House, am I jumping the gun? Is there a pathway to New England taking the sort of monstrous step back that your Commanders suffered just a year ago?
It's hard to say, but that's the direction I would head in. I mean, there will be open questions, and everything when it comes to an overachieving team boils down to off-season, what happens in terms of personnel. Because New England needs to fortify its offensive line. New England arrives going into next season with a better defensive scheme. They have more settled personnel than Washington. Washington basically went through a revamp of half of its defensive personnel. And Washington landing in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago was really out of left field and a function of a schedule plus a quarterback that the entire league had not seen and couldn't game plan against. But the Washington defense was busted then, and it was busted all of last year for sure. The thing that's going to be a challenge for New England, the character of their offense, the offensive efficiency over the final 4 games, over those 3 playoff games plus the Super Bowl, we'll look at the defenses that they're going to play next season. They have Seattle on their schedule. They're traveling there. They're going to the Chargers. That was one of the teams that gave them trouble. The Packers, you figure if Micah Parsons is able to be back by the time that they play, they have the Broncos again, and the Broncos are coming to New England. They are traveling to the Chiefs. They are traveling to the Lions. Both of those teams are looking to reset after last year. I really think that this is going to be an entirely different kind of challenge for New England. Now, that again, they have an advantage over Washington in the sense that they have their defense figured out, but it's the offensive part. They better get some line help because they are going up against teams that can get after it.
Dream, you love connecting the dots with this sort of stuff. Are you ready to do that with New England? Like immediately, like are they the team? And I know we're going to have the entire winter into the spring, into the summer to dissect what they do in the offseason. But are they an immediate candidate for regression?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, by far. When you look at a team who's had they played the easiest schedule in the NFL, and now it's like, I mean, they overperformed their Pythagorean expectation. They were 14-3. He won like 16 games in a row. Overperformed our Pythagorean expectation by 1.5 games. So right there, you kind of got to be looking at this team to regress. And if you look at the rest of their schedule, obviously it's not going to be easier. So I think it's an immediate underplay, but we'll see where he put the numbers at, because obviously everybody knows that. So, and this is a market. So let's see where they open their win total, and then we can kind of go from there.
Here's the case for New England, El House, and I do want to make this case.
Yeah.
They have a ton of salary cap space.
Yes.
Ton of salary cap space. They clearly were a year ahead of schedule. And I know Mike Vrabel and Drake May did not distinguish themselves here in the Super Bowl. But I'm a believer in that quarterback. I still am holding my stock. I'm clearly holding my Mike Vrabel stock with the way he's able to lead, with the way he's able to inspire. Don't be surprised if A.J. Brown finds his way to New England, because Mike Vrabel can harness him, can get the most out of him. I do believe that. And, House, here's what I would detail for New England. I think they will probably win less games going into next season. I don't think it's a given they're going to win their division. But double-digit wins, I don't see them falling off a cliff in the way that Washington fell off a cliff. I think there's too much organizational stability. And no disrespect, Dan Quinn, Mike Vrabel, you are not. Just saying.
I'm not going to lie. I can see them falling off a cliff. And
really?
Yes.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yes, that is the historical precedent for Super Bowl losers outside of Mahomes and Brady. Go through the Super Bowl losers. Outside of Mahomes and Brady, they all fall off a cliff. And, Billy Walters has this in his book, but, the first 4 games of the regular season for the Super Bowl loser, that's like 1.5 to the point spread for the other team. So these teams just don't do well. I don't have the numbers in front of me in terms of, the against the spread records, but if you look it up, it's pretty damning. So I could see this team completely falling off a cliff, missing the postseason, being like a 7-10 team, or a 8-9 team. It's just I could just see them completely falling off. So because that's what happens to Super Bowl losers.
House, they'll set that total what for New England? 9.5 next year? That's what I bet their win total is.
Wow. I was going to guess higher. I was going to guess 10.5.
Okay.
Because they still get the Jets and the Dolphins, and they have the Raiders on their schedule. And I personally think the Steelers are going to be terrible. So there's 4 games. They get the Steelers at home. They get the Jets and Dolphins at home. They get the Raiders at home. So that's a pretty good starting point. I would have guessed 10.5, but if 9.5, I wouldn't be shocked.
Well, boys, on that note, when we come back, the way too early look at the odds for next season in the NFL, and just a little spoiler. Last year, I gave you 2 plays the day after the Super Bowl. You can best believe we're doing that again. We'll get the boys' take coming up next. It's the day after Super Bowl 60. The East Coast Bias Boys rocking and rolling on the FanDuel Sports Network, and, of course, for our friends on Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the odds for Super Bowl 61 at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles next Valentine's Day are up, and, of course, you can get in on the action. I'm going to read the odds, fellas, and I'm going to stop with a team at 75-1, and then we'll go from there. Seattle is the favorite, plus 750. Then you have the Rams at 8-1. Then you have the 2 big boys in the AFC, Baltimore and Buffalo at 12-1. Green Bay at 13-1. The Chargers and the Eagles at 15-1. The Lions and the Chiefs at 16-1. New England down that list. Interesting, Raheem, 17-1. San Francisco's at 18-1. Then we get to the 20-1 range. Denver, Jacksonville, Houston are all in that camp. Chicago's at 27-1. Cincy, Dallas, 30-1. Indy, 40-1. Commanders, Joe House, 45-1. And this is where we're going to stop. Atlanta, Tampa, Minnesota, all at 50-1. And the New York Football Giants at 75-1. Joe House, I plan on betting 1 AFC and 1 NFC team. Would you like to take a guess?
I will guess first on your NFC team, and I think you're going to take the Chicago Bears.
Okay, Raheem, I will allow you to guess.
On your NFC team?
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not gonna attempt, because I don't know what you're thinking.
That's fine. It is not the Chicago Bears, fellas. The team I am looking at Kyle Shanahan's San Francisco 49ers. Because to me, they're as well coached as any team that you're going to find. I love their offense. And let's be real on this, Joe House. Despite the loss of Robert Saleh, that defense was beyond decimated with injuries, and yet they found themselves basically in the second round of the postseason. They were playing a game in week 18. If they had won, they would have been the number one seed. I'm a believer that this core and this group still has one more run left in them. And I know there's age on that roster. So the pushback is going to be, hey, JJ, they got hurt last year. They're going to get hurt again this year. But I think at that price, with that coaching staff, with that sort of structure, I'm still a believer in San Francisco. Thoughts?
Well, it's kind of interesting because San Francisco is catching a third place schedule because that's where they competed for the one seed, and somehow I think they're getting a third place schedule this upcoming season. I think that's right. My only issue is at 18-1. I don't feel like you're getting compensated enough risk-wise for how hard that division is. Because Seattle's coming back, they're loaded. The Rams are coming back, I think they're loaded. And so, like, every one of those games, I mean, Arizona, everybody's going to catch a W in that division, but the division games are so tough that's part of why I tapped the brakes with San Francisco at 18-1. If it was higher, maybe I'd consider it.
Yeah, and I mean, they've consistently always been a team that's just injured. I don't know what it is about the San Francisco 49ers.
The field, Raheem, it's something in the water in Santa Clara.
The electromagnetic station.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say no, but right now I'm not personally
on the Niners. That's okay. House, in the NFC, if there was a team that stood out to you there with those 20-27 odds, who would it be?
The one that jumped off the page at me in the NFC was the Atlanta Falcons at 50-1. And it's just the price. I mean, it's a function of that team was capable of competing with anybody in the entire NFL. They were not outclassed personnel-wise. They were just outclassed organizationally. They were outclassed institutionally. They were outclassed scheme-wise. They were outclassed strategy-wise. But look who they beat. I mean, they beat both Buffalo and the LA Rams this year. They also lost 30-0 to Carolina. I mean, and they went on a winning streak at the end of the season that if they hadn't wasted stupid games earlier in the season, they would have made the playoffs. So at 50-1, if Stefanski is worth half his meal in reputation, we're going to find out. And it would be a very, very, very funny story to have Sam Darnold followed by Kirk Cousins in terms of redemption stories.
Yeah, this is actually one that I actually had as well. I had two from the same division, actually, which is interesting because I like the Atlanta Falcons at 50-1 just because, I mean, you got Kevin Stefanski. He has two-time Coach of the Year award. I mean, you saw in 2023, he went to the postseason with 6 different NFL quarterbacks. And now, unlike Cleveland, he actually has weapons at his disposal. He has Bijan Robinson. He has Drake London. Like, he has guys who he can throw the ball to. And then, obviously, we know he's already worked with Kirk Cousins in Minnesota when he was the quarterback.
Well, it looks like Cousins is getting released, though, guys. I gotta stop you both right there. It looks like, according to all reports, he's going to be done in Atlanta. So Stefanski's going to have a new quarterback.
Okay, I mean, ultimately, he's going to be defined by, how well he manages Michael Penix. But, as a whole, you got to remember that defense was solid, and they're retaining their defensive coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, as well. Now, I got another one, and this one might throw y'all off.
That's fine.
Probably the mayor of this city at this point in time, but I'm going with the Carolina Panthers.
I know where he's going.
I'm going with the Carolina Panthers 150-1. Because when I watched the Carolina Panthers this year, they beat Green Bay. They beat the Rams. They were right there with the Rams in the the postseason. I don't know what their free agent moves are going to be. I don't know what their draft picks are going to be. But from what I saw from Carolina, they should not be priced, in the same range as the Miami Dolphins and the New York Jets and the Arizona Cardinals. I think they're a couple of moves away. So if I have to look, I know I'm dumpster diving at this point in time, but I think in the NFL and in the modern era of parity, you kind of have to dumpster dive, and that's what I'm doing.
Hey, listen, I like the sound of that. You find value, and I'm with you on the point that, yes, Carolina should not be lumped in with Miami, the Jets, and the Arizona Cardinals. That said, though, Raheem, I think, is just trying to enhance his candidacy that much more for when he goes and decides to run for the mayor of Charlotte. So be that as it may. Joe House, now you have to guess again. AFC team that Mr. Jastremski has identified.
This one I feel a little more confident in. I think it's the Houston Texans.
You know me well, buddy boy. You know me well. And Raheem detailed the reasoning for why I would look at that number and say I want to be on board. Right. Despite everything I saw from C.J. Stroud, which was horrifying throughout the postseason, if there's a defense that can duplicate what the Seattle Seahawks were able to do, maybe they're going to do it differently as far as schematics are concerned. We know Houston has the elite level pass rush. Dream. That to me is the team. If this era of defense and these defensive runs in January are going to keep continuing, don't you want to get on board with maybe the best defense pound for pound the league has to offer?
I can't do it because I at 20-1, I'm not seeing a ton of value. And then also, what's going to happen with C.J. Stroud and his extension? And
hey, I like the idea of him being motivated. You know what? I'd say go big boy. Go sing for your supper. You know I like motivated players. That's why I like guys playing in walk years. Get that Joe Flacco vibe, you know? Bet on yourself.
And then also I'm a little concerned with, still their offensive line is just so bad. They haven't been able to fix it. I don't know who their offensive coordinator is going to be going into next year, but they continue to change it and it's just not working offensively. So I think the defense is Super Bowl level, but the offense continues to be lottery level. So I don't know. I can't do it.
Joe House, anything in the AFC like?
It would have been Houston, except for I don't love the price. But they, to me, have the biggest opportunity because if that defense can be replicated, there's always we keep learning this lesson. You can manufacture an offensive line. That was the thing that let them down, especially against New England. And it was a kind of a toughness. Now they did lose Joe Mixon at the very outset of the season, so I think they had to kind of adjust on the fly. But if they are able to stabilize the running back room and get any talent whatsoever on the offensive line, then I like them. And the other aspect of it is like there's just no value in the AFC. I mean, the Bengals at 30-1 are extremely uninteresting to me. And then you have to go wait 100-1 on the Steelers. No, thank you. I'm not interested in it.
Yeah, the AFC is ugly, but I think maybe you just want to just hope for another Mahomes Invitational tournament. I mean, at 16-1.
Can't fight it.
I mean, when was the last time you got 16-1 on the Chiefs?
Right.
It's been a while.
And now maybe this price maybe this price actually gets better because Mahomes might be out, week 1, week 2.
First couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think like if I'm looking at like prices, that's probably the one, but I don't have anything.
See, Baltimore, out of the favorites in the AFC, I think the Jesse Minter effect on that defense is going to be real and spectacular.
Yeah.
And, sooner or later, the Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen has got to break through, right?
But it's 12. That's the thing. It's 12-1.
No value. I get it. No value.
It's barely worse than last year.
Yeah, it's 12-1 in a division where you still got to play Joe Burrow. Now, I mean, there is no rah-rah Mike Tomlin spot anymore, so you don't have to worry about that. And then I don't know. I think that number should be higher.
This is the challenge for you guys. As we think through the summer, who do you think is the worst division in the NFL now? Because we used to historically just point to the South, AFC South, NFC South. There's your bad divisions, but we can't do that anymore. You can't just knee jerk say, "Oh, here's my walkover games and put these in pen right now." This is the challenge for both win totals and forecasting division winners coming up here. Because the problem with the Chiefs is the Chargers and the Broncos aren't going anywhere. And those teams, the Chargers especially, get health on the offensive line. That's a tough division.
No question about it. I call that a homework assignment. More of a deep dive homework assignment over the next few months for the East Coast Bias Boys. When we come back, I'm going to complain about losing waste management.
I'm going to say the AFC East.
There you go. All right, we'll put that in the memory bank. We got to hit a break. Anthony Dabbundo is going to come back for 3 and out for the 2025 finale. and any takeaways perhaps from the NBA and our best bets. All of that is still to come. Home stretch, Ringer Gambling Show, East Coast Bias Boys on a Monday. John Jastremski, Raheem Palmer, Joe House, and we welcome in the newest member of the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks coaching staff. I think he's like the assistant quality control coach. Maybe that's his new title. Anthony Dabbundo. How are you, sir?
I'm the assistant to the traveling secretary, JJ. That is my official title.
You and George Costanza. I love it. I absolutely love
Yes.
it. So you, I know, came on this show right after the AFC and the NFC championship games and expressed confidence that Seattle was going to go and win the Super Bowl. You saw the script. You saw it play out. Did it go according to script? Did it surprise you a little bit? What was your grand takeaway from Super Bowl 60?
I think I underestimated how much Seattle's defense was going to dominate this game. And, my friend and I came up with a nickname back around week 14, week 15, right after New England lost to Buffalo. We called them the paper mache Patriots. And maybe the house of cards held up for a little bit longer because they got to play CJ Stroud, who was donating the game. They got to play Jarrett Stidham, who was not a starting quarterback. They got to play Justin Herbert, who has still to this day not performed in the playoffs. But when they played a team that was not going to completely blow the game offensively, which that Seattle offense did not, we kind of saw just the limitations of what this New England offense really was. And yes, I think it's very hard to look at anything New England did this year and not think of it as a product somewhat of that schedule that they played. And I do think it's interesting. The one comp that you guys made is the Commanders from last season. The comp that kept bugging in my head was actually the Bengals from 2021, a team that rode their defense to the Super Bowl, not their star quarterback, a team whose star quarterback got exposed a little bit in that Super Bowl with a lot of sacks and a lot of issues. And the organization in Cincinnati is much worse than the organization in New England, but you could see some of the same problems emerging if New England does not do a better job of protecting Drake May, and honestly, if Drake May doesn't do a better job of avoiding sacks.
Interesting, though, that Cincinnati team, they go to the Super Bowl. The following year, House, they got off to a slow start, but then they got cooking. They won a playoff game against Buffalo. Right. They made it to an AFC championship game that went down to the nitty-gritty against the Kansas City Chiefs. So, from that parallel, I think New England would gladly sign for having a reboot similar to what Cincinnati had. Maybe not from a long-term perspective, but the following year, they ended up having success.
Yeah, 10, 11 wins and another playoff berth. I think New England would take that right now, wouldn't they?
No question. No question. And winning their division, Dabbundo, is obviously going to be a challenge, not only playing a tougher schedule, but you also know that Josh Allen is staring you in the face and you're going to have to go and play him twice.
Yeah, I would still think Buffalo is a clear favorite over New England next year. I know the market's going to say that too. The market said that when the two teams played in New England, and Buffalo closed a favorite midway through the season, in December this year. So, when you think about New England, though, what are the areas that they most need to address? Because I actually think the list is a little bit longer than people realize. I still don't trust the receiving room. The O-line clearly has issues. You're starting this left tackle and this left guard that are rookies. You want to give them leeway and runway to develop, but you also don't want to handicap your team here by playing a left side of your offensive line that's so deficient that your quarterback is getting crushed regularly. So that's where this gets really tricky. You have so much success. Now you don't have the same level of draft capital. They spent a lot of money in the offseason to kind of paper over the cracks, the paper mache Patriots. And now you have to figure out how you can navigate on maybe a little bit of a tighter budget with less draft capital to allocate. And there are more holes than you realize in this roster.
Still a ton of salary cap space, though. And you guys can take this to the bank. AD, you're in Philadelphia. A.J. Brown as a future New England Patriot just sounds about right. It just does.
I mean, I don't disagree. I think it makes sense for the Eagles if they're absolutely decided that they have to move on from AJ Brown. But I do suspect that with the new offensive coordinator coming in, there's going to be a lot of soul searching and a lot of conversating that happens inside the NovaCare complex to do anything to try to fix this relationship between Hurts and Brown. And maybe it is just somebody coming from outside the organization with a fresh set of eyes on this offense to try to fix this problem between the quarterback and the receiver and the coach and try to figure out what exactly is going on here, because the Eagles are a really interesting team on the odds board to talk about for 2026, even because you could convince me that this is kind of similar to 2 years ago. You still have the great defense in place, and then now the offensive coordinator, maybe we trust more, but you could also convince me that we've already seen the best of Philly and that they're on this downward slope and that Sirianni is actually in trouble.
Yeah, that's where I would be leaning. I feel like we've seen the best of this Philly team. I'm not going anywhere near them, despite the talent that Vic Fangio is going to bring to that defense. I don't trust the head coach, and after what I saw last year, quarterback's got a lot of work to do as well. Before we get to take two, AD, spoiler alert for next year's preview shows. I think you will be all over the Patriot under. Is that accurate?
We'll have to see what the number is, but I suspect that I will be, yes. I mean, we'll see. Again, if it's 10.5, certainly that would be high. The biggest question we have to figure out, and I think dive into, is how much of it was just playing elite defenses or was something else going on? Was there actually an injury we don't know about with May? I tend to think it had a lot more to do with the schedule, with the pressure. And the one number that I always love to look at with quarterbacks is pressure to sack rate. Sack rates will kill an offense. The biggest difference between Caleb Williams in year 1 and year 2 was the sack avoidance. One thing Bo Nix managed to pull off this year, they were good enough offensively because he avoided sacks. The rate at which Drake May took sacks against good competition this year is not at all sustainable. The explosive plays will not always be there. So I think that's the one thing you have to watch. And honestly, like, that's why I make the Burrow comparison. It's a problem for Joe Burrow too. As bad as his O-line is, so much of Burrow holding on the ball too long got him hit a lot, got him injured. So that has to be a part of the calculus too. So I think trying to dig in and figure out exactly what's driving those issues is really important.
All right, AD, take two. Fire away.
Take two. I am investing in the Houston Texans in 2026. I think they are the team to buy.
Wow, look at you. Look
Yeah,
at you.
I'm coming full circle. Year 2, it looks like they're going to keep Nick Caley. I think it's very clear what the number one priority has to be for them. And they might not succeed at fixing it. They may fail again. But taking another shot, another bite at the apple to try to figure out this offensive line issue is really the only hole in this roster, because they've also drafted young skill players. And that's why I think I like this team. Your Hutchinsons of the world, your Markses of the world, Noel, who had a little bit of a breakout in the middle of the season there. Nico Collins is an established solid receiver. So you like the skill group enough. Schultz, pretty respectable at tight end. And I mean, look at the resume that Houston put up in the second half of the season. I know we were all making money betting their unders every week and cashing 75% of the time, but their only 2 losses after the bye week were at Seattle. Ugly game, yes, but a pretty tough spot, I think it's fair to say. And then they lost by 3 to Denver in a game that CJ Stroud got hurt in the first quarter or second quarter. So he barely played. And then down the stretch run, beating Buffalo, winning at Indy, although it was a little bit fluky, winning at KC, winning at the Chargers. Like, they put together some real wins here. CJ Stroud, lights maybe a little too bright for him in the playoffs in that divisional round, but they were in that game too. So look, maybe Stroud never develops beyond what he is. Maybe the offensive line never gets fixed. But if you're looking for upside in that second tier, I think it has to be Houston copying the playbook of elite defense and just good enough offense to win the conference.
Hey, listen, we saw a redemption story for a quarterback this past year in Sam Darnold. And look, CJ Stroud has more on the resume than Sam Darnold did going into 2025. So Dabbundo and Raheem are in the future together. Houston Texans, get it while you can, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. All right, AD, 2 down, 1 to go.
So who's your NFC? Who's my NFC team? You guys want to guess?
Oh, I know already. I feel really confident in saying this. Green Bay Packers.
It's not Green Bay.
Oh,
Wow. I call my shot. That's what I got.
I wanted it to be Green Bay because I'm a Green Bay guy. You guys know I love the cheese. I just don't feel like going to war with them. It's 7-1 to win the conference. Like, I feel like I could probably get that number, if not better, later in the year or sometime middle of the season. I'm trying to think about who could have like a quote unquote big off season. And I'm actually really interested in Chicago.
sure.
Wow.
As lucky as they were this year, as
That's
lucky as they
surprising.
were.
I did not think you'd go in that direction because you
Me
were a hater
neither.
on the Bears for a good chunk of this year.
Yes, they were a lucky team without a shred of doubt. They rode their turnover luck. Their defense was bad. And I think this is where you have to figure out as a general manager, and you'll see very quickly. I haven't bet this yet, but you'll see very quickly how smart is this team? How smart is this front office? Because a smart and forward-looking one would see how bad their defense was and would make major changes to that defense going into next season, like they did this year with the offense. They invested in their O-line, and it paid off. Caleb Williams, year 2 with Ben Johnson, I thought he took major strides forward. Yes, it wasn't always pretty, but I think Chicago, to me, has more upside than Dallas, who I think is poorly run and doesn't know how to build a defense. Tampa feels like they've probably peaked out. Commanders roster is a bit of a sieve. Minnesota, if they had any semblance of a quarterback, I would probably buy the Vikings, but I can't do it with 9. So you look down the board in the second tier of teams, I feel like Chicago's arrow is pointing upwards still.
Fascinating. All right, before we say goodbye, boys, best bets, house, hit me. Let's go.
It's officially tank time in the NBA. The trade deadline is behind us. The teams that want to tank are stepping down hard on the pedal. We got a money line parlay here. 2 teams that are absolutely in this tank train. We're taking the Bulls at Brooklyn. Brooklyn's just playing the 7 rookies that they drafted this year. Everybody else is sitting out, including Michael Porter Jr. And then the Pelicans are at home against the Kings. The Kings aren't playing anybody. It's the Pelicans and the Bulls. Money line parlay plus 106 on the FanDuel Sportsbook.
Dream, quick, what do we got?
Yeah, I personally played the Sixers -2. I also played the Nuggets and the Cavs over 235. It's up to like 240 now. That's what I got. The numbers have moved. So if you can't get good numbers, that's too bad. I'm sorry.
AD, can I get you on board with Rock Chalk Jayhawk tonight? Big one.
That line keeps moving. I'm going to invest in Arizona. I'm going to keep watching it. I think Kansas might close a favorite or close to it. And I will happily bet Arizona at like -115, if 120, if it gets there. I don't think this market is right. I think it's starting to get a little too much rock chalked for me, JJ.
Save the juice. Let's take a heads up. That's going to do it for the East Coast Bias Boys. For Dabbundo, Raheem, and House, JJ signing off. We'll see you. Be good, everybody.
21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with the Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present D.C., Kentucky, or Wyoming. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. For Louisiana, call 1-877-770-7867.